21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
If you've booked a hotel online and you've seen pictures of that hotel, those would have come from my server. My name is Henry Woodman. How did I get to a technology company when I was into the creative, production side? I can start with my hedonistic sort of approach to entrepreneurship. When I was in college, I was doing video game machines and laundromats because I was addicted to Pac-Man, and I was sitting in a laundromat with a pocket full of quarters. So opportunity presented itself. My hedonistic want says, there's a problem for me, it could be a problem for others. So I don't know if that is of interest, especially for the young entrepreneurs, is how the hell do you get started in all this, And a lot of people will say, I want to go out and I want to find some opportunity. You know what? It generally finds you. When you find that there is a problem or something that you're grappling with, do you have a solution? Don't just sit there and say, wow, somebody really needs to do something. Maybe that somebody is you, right? When I look back on my life and I say, how did all these dots connect? I really look at myself as more of a hedonistic and opportunistic entrepreneur. And I say that because back in college in the late 70s and early 80s, I'm sitting in a laundromat. I have a pocket full of quarters. I'm jonesing for Pac-Man. I was totally into video games. And I don't want to open the books, right? So I go home, I call every laundromat in Tucson. I said, you guys have video games? Most of them, well, all of them said no. And I said, would you like some? Some of them said yes. So for my hedonistic want, the problem I had was I wanted to play video games. I was captive in a laundromat with a pocket full of quarters. Eventually, I bought a machine with the little money I had for college funds, right? It was a used machine, and eventually I bought more and I moved them around, knowing that once people figured out it was kind of a crappy machine, they'd come back a couple of weeks later and there'd be another machine, even if that was crappy. That way I had an audience that caught there and said, listen, I got nothing better to do. I'm going to play video games. So I sell that business just for enough money to go to Los Angeles and pay bills so I don't stress while I'm looking to pursue my career as a film director and producer. That didn't happen. What ended up happening was I started working on travel films as what's called a PA, a production assistant. And eventually, I worked my way up into the sound guy and then the assistant director. And eventually I was the producer of travel films. And for 10 years, I traveled around the world helping produce and deliver travel films. In the late 80s, early 90s, Chile in South America went from a dictatorship to a democracy. And we had filmed in Chile, and we realized, wow, with the new democracy, they're adding television stations, thus opportunity, and the television stations need content. So I fly down, I call up my production partner that I used before, and I say, let's schedule some meetings with the local television stations. And they said, you got it. So I ripped off an idea from a show in the US. I realized that Chile had a younger demographic. So it was a young dating show for, the 18 to 28-year-old, 30-year-old crowd. And we pitched the show. It was called Machos. Within a couple of months, we're on the air. So now I'm an executive producer for a game show in Latin America. While I'm in Chile, I see this new technology starting to allow me to cut and paste video images via a digital editor, nonlinear edit systems. Wow, mind blown. And I'm thinking, that is the coolest thing ever. Then somebody hands me a CD-ROM and it shows me 360-degree virtual tours. And I'm thinking, even better. I can look all around a destination or a room with a computer. I don't even have to go. So I'm thinking I don't have to travel with 5 guys and 17 pieces of luggage. I can just get a one shot 360 camera, set up a company, and produce virtual tours for the travel industry. Yes. Right. So I set up a company called World Travel Vision. I'm traveling around producing these virtual tours. I would give clients a CD-ROM. And eventually, any kid with a camera and a computer becomes a competitor. And so the hotel clients said, how do we get these tours on this new World Wide Web thingy? Right? Now, this is the mid to late 90s. And I'm thinking, I don't know, send them a CD-ROM, right? I don't know technology. And they say, yeah, we do, and there are no standards. So I said, let me see what we can do to help. So I do a little investigation, and I find that not only do virtual tours need help in getting to travel sites like Expedia, Travelocity, Booking. Well, Booking didn't exist at the time, but the photos were a problem as well because the early systems that would do the rates and the availability never had photos, right? So they take that rate and availability to the internet, but somehow the hotels would have to individually upload photos. The management companies didn't have control over the photos. There were issues with, intellectual property rights and stuff. So I thought, well, okay, here's another opportunity. We were starting to distribute virtual tours. Let's try to distribute the photos. And eventually, having to connect to literally hundreds of travel sites and websites around the world, the challenge was to get the hotel groups to to give us their images so we would then size, tag, and categorize and send them everywhere. So we ended up, if you go onto a travel website today, now I sold the company a few years ago, but if you go onto a travel website and you see pictures of a hotel, generally those will have come from my old company, which was ICE Portal. It was an acronym for Internet Content Exchange. But when I look back, I realize that I would not have gotten there had I not been introduced along the way to all these other things that presented that opportunity. So looking back, connecting the dots made me realize, how did a guy who knows nothing about technology build and sell a technology company? In addition, I didn't really know how to run a company. I knew beginning, middle, and an end with a production, pre-production, production, post-production, deliver product next, right? So with a business, it required a lot more understanding of how to build the vision and the culture and the KPIs and essentially structure the foundational processes. And that took me a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes, a lot of near bankruptcies, and a couple of decades to get to the point where a strategic partner, bought the company. So part of the challenges in building a business as I had was this imposter syndrome. I'm giving a presentation, I look around the room, there's a bunch of MBA students auditing these CEOs, and I'm thinking, who the hell am I? I know nothing. What am I doing here? Oh my God, I'm an imposter, right? I go back to school in my 50s to get my MBA in entrepreneurship. I also read a book to understand how to better get there, right? It's important to me that you learn from mistakes and you also understand, because there's a big difference, if you will, in saying to somebody, listen, I know you don't know how to swim, but this is all you do. Read it in a book and I'll throw you in the water. You're not going to swim. You're going to drown. And the effort you put in, I can say this. So mindset is really important, the people you hang out with. And then I can go on to, one of the things that I dreamed about doing back when I moved to Los Angeles was producing movies. And as I said, and I bought the rights to a book. Now, 40 years later, I'm going full circle. I'm taking that book and I just published it, and then we can go from there. So along the way, I look back and I'm thinking, wow, God, am I lucky? How did I get here? But I gotta say, along the way, some of the things that really, really gnawed at me was this imposter syndrome. Early on, somebody invited me to give a presentation to a bunch of CEOs. And around the room, there were these MBA students. And I thought to myself while I'm up there, man, am I a fraud? The syndrome of imposter syndrome was kicking in, right? So I thought to myself, I really need to go back to school and get my MBA so I can know what the hell I'm doing. I went back to school in my 50s. I got my MBA. I read up on how to properly structure a business, right? When somebody would say early on, you need to hire the best people, I'm thinking to myself, I can't even afford to pay myself. I can't afford to pay best people, right? Or you need a vision. I didn't know what that meant. You need to put together your KPIs. I'm like, what the heck's a KPI, right? So all of these things were learned along the way. It's kind of like the analogy and a paradox of the difference between drowning and treading water. If I gave you a book and I said, this is how you tread water, and you say, okay, you simply calmly move your hands back and forth in this motion, and I'm going to throw you in the water and you're going to learn how to swim or tread water. The truth of the matter is, you're probably going to flail your arms around. You're going to expend a lot of mental and physical energy, and you think you're going to drown. You're going to die, right? It takes time and mistakes and errors and attempts to learn how to tread water. It's the same with the business, at least in my opinion. I had to learn from the mistakes. From those mistakes, if I was aware of it, I would grow and try not to make the same mistake again. Additionally, pivoting. When I started out, I was producing virtual tours, and then I realized the production is not the value, it's the distribution. And the distribution of the virtual tours is nice to have, but not the need to have. And so the photos were the need to have. And then you turn around and you realize, wow, if I can connect to all these places, that's a huge moat, right? The barrier to entry is huge because, one, when I connect to a Hilton, a Hyatt, or a Wyndham, or an Accor, they're probably not going to uncouple, if I do right by them and I deliver a good service, right? So getting those elements together was really important. Surrounding myself with the right people was really important. And it takes me full circle because originally I wanted to produce and direct movies back in the day when I moved to LA. While I was there, I bought the rights to a book, right? And I thought, yeah, what a great idea. I'm going to produce a movie from this book. Well, the world has changed. Back then, 40 years ago, the control was a few distributors, and it was not like it is today, where there are tons of opportunities for producing content because there's lots of channels with streaming networks and cable. You have a plethora of opportunities. So the book, which is called The Reincarnation of Marie, essentially is about a guy who finds his soulmate. The only problem is she died 70 years earlier. It's based on an actual woman named Marie Barshkersaf. He reads her journal. She wrote a journal between 14 and 24. She died at 24 of tuberculosis. And 2 years after her death, they published this journal of her childhood. And it became an international bestseller because it talked about things that women didn't talk about at the time, sexuality and masturbation and things like that. It's like, ooh, can't talk about that. So he reads it 70 years later. He falls in love with the woman who wrote it. And he believes she wrote it for him and she's going to find him. And then he realizes, oh my God, I've lost my mind. I've fallen in love with a dead woman. This is not right. This is crazy. And he finds her reincarnation. So it's a wonderful story, a very linear sort of love story, historical fiction. The idea now is to take that a step further and create a series that does a much deeper dive into our current lives and how other lives in the past are intertwined if they reincarnate or if they're soulmates with our current lives. And if truly we have karma or we're paying back sins of the father, or if there's such a thing as the metaverse and we can be in multiple places at the same time, or even the concept of soulmates. And do we have to meet every lifetime? No. And do we have animosities, love and hate being two sides of the same coin. We obviously don't answer the questions, but we ask the questions, and that's sort of the concept moving forward with my dream of going full circle in producing. So at the end of the day, when people say, wow, how did you persevere through all of that? The reality is, I think in large part, it's a couple of reasons. One, mindset is hugely important. Your thoughts create your life, right? Now, it's really easy to say, oh, be positive or think this and, things will come. No, they don't always come, but you have to realize when the opportunities present themselves that there are ways to get there. And even if hurdles and mountains appear, you have to find your way around them, be it overcome them or pivot and find another option. So at the end of the day, I think in large part, I have to thank sports. I was a swimmer as a kid, so the competitive nature, the discipline of getting in the pool, even though I didn't want to swim or it was cold, helped me with the mindset of continually going forward and not quitting, right? The other thing I also would attribute that to is, that saying that you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with, is I would try to surround myself with people that were very accomplished, right? Because they're inspiring, they're motivational, and they provide great feedback and motivation to move forward, right? If my friends, for example, punched a clock and they've quit their job at 5 o'clock and they always complained about their job and they went home and they sat on the sofa eating chips, I too would be doing the same thing, right? But as I have other people that I look up to and they've done well, and it makes me it inspires me and it motivates me to do the same. So mindset, the focus on overcoming, right? And not quitting. Even, I don't say quit, like always try something. It means if it's not working, find a way around it or find a way to fix it or pivot, right? And then continue on. I hear sometimes when people say, I want to start a business because I love clothing. I want to do a boutique shop on Main Street. Yeah, okay. There's not a big barrier to entry there. And, is that a problem that you're solving, right? Is there an opportunity here? I would venture to say no. So look for things, one, that you like, two, that are solving a problem or helping, create an opportunity. Three, that you have the understanding, businesses are not easy. It's not like you would read in the press, oh my God, he started a business, he became a multimillionaire overnight. It's not that easy. It took me 20 years and lots of years of struggle and multiple times where I was almost bankrupt to get that business sold. I was very fortunate, but I believed in myself. I also think the people around me helped with that inspiration. So finally, I get to do what I really want to do, knowing that there isn't a huge moat around production of a TV series. I mean, anybody with a camera and a computer is now a production company, right? And can produce a TV series. It's my dream. And being that I have a little bit of freedom financially, I can pursue that because it's my passion and it's my last chapter. As I learned, my approach to business initially was doing the hedonistic and opportunistic thing. And the approach essentially has served me really well because I didn't know enough to know that I didn't know anything at the time, right? So as I grew and I developed the ice portal business, I still went back to school to get my MBA. So the approach was, okay, if I'm really going to do this, I'm going to do it right. I got a book called Traction, which I loved, and called Gino Wickman. It gave me basic understanding of how to deal with those, simple structural processes, right? What does it mean when you say get a culture, right? Or have a vision, right? So the approach was essentially building a strong foundation that will allow you to scale and build upon, because without that, it's not going to work, right? The most impressive thing to me when I talk to small businesses is, what problem are you solving? First, is it a problem, right? It's not, oh, this is sexy and I want to do it, and other people are doing it and they made money. Okay, yeah, but is it now a problem, or are you doing something better, and can you prove it? And the other challenge is, if you're a small startup, you have to pay the dues, because nobody's going to hire you because they think, oh, a startup, he may not be around in a year or two. I don't know if I want to, take that chance. So you have to prove yourself, you have to build, you're going to sacrifice things. So I think in large part, doing a lot of those fundamental things will help you in the long run. So what am I doing next is always the question, when I hear people say, oh my God, I can't wait to retire. I'm just going to relax and sit on the beach or play golf or something. Yeah, okay. And then after 2 weeks, you're going to be bored out of your mind, because like me, most entrepreneurs are very ADD, right? They can't sit still. They have to do something. And because my passion 20 years ago was get into the film and television production, and I have the rights to this book, I'm developing the series. We have information on the website. It's called mariethestory.com. That includes information on the book, on the series, which is now called Slippin', which is essentially slipping through time, right? And it also includes links to my LinkedIn and Facebook and other places if you want to get a hold of me and you've got more information. mariethestory.com is probably the best place to gather information on what the hell I'm doing these days.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.